criminals are always targeting computer crime. You know, when you look at it, you discover that their target is either they can target a specific computer, they can target an individual, or they can target a group. You know, if they target a group, it's for them to steal information from that group. For instance, now they might decide to target a place like Unica, just to come and compromise the database of Unica, University of Calabar, and then cause a lot of trouble. They can decide to steal personal information, individual information. Then another their target of criminals is that what we call the critical national infrastructures. When you look at the critical national infrastructures, you discover that their aim is to target things like the emergency services that they provide, and like in the communication industry, they can also target the communication industry so that people will not be able to have access to communication. They can target energy distribution. For instance, now if they target the power sector, you discover that there won't be light, you know. And then the financial institutions, a lot of hackers target financial institutions and steal information from maybe like the banks, it can be the exchange and whatsoever. You know, the excess of them doing all this is for them to gain access to it and steal information. You can see that here, what we have on the screen here, you can see cyber crime against individuals. That's when you commit that crime against a particular person or people. Then cyber crime against company organizations like banks, exchange houses, power sectors, and so. Then we have cyber crime against society. You can start to commit cyber crime against society or cyber crime against government. These are all the areas that hackers target. They can target any of these organizations or any of this sector to commit crime. Why these sectors are liable to target is because they communicate through internet. Most of them cannot work effectively without internet services. Because they are connected to the internet, they are liable to attack. So because of that, we are going to look at crime prevention and IT security. Because services that we offer are liable to attack, how can we protect them? We need to protect them to be able to protect our information. You know, information is very, very vital. If you have access to certain information which you are not supposed to have, you can cause a lot of harm. So how can we prevent information? So to protect data and provide security, there are some strategies that are put in place and some technology solutions. And one of those solutions is what we call the CIA security concept. The CIA security concept. This concept combines three components to be able to, you know, take care of security and provide good security and services for the IT industry. One of the concepts is called confidentiality, and the second one is called integrity, and the other one is called availability. This concept helps to guide and measure the control of securities. We will see how these concepts are used to control security in our next slide. So we are going to define this concept of CIA insecurity. When we talk about confidentiality, that means secrecy. When something is secret, it is confidential. That means for that thing to be confidential, only authorized users of that system or process are allowed to use that system or resources. Only authorized users. For instance, if you have a password to a particular system, that system has confidentiality. But once that password is being used by another person that does not have authority to use that system, that means the confidentiality of that system is compromised. The next point that we have is what we call integrity. Integrity of a system is the ability of that system to be able to retain resources. That means only authorized users are given will be able to modify anything on it. For instance, now you have a particular record. If you don't have right to that record, you are not supposed to modify that record or change anything in that record. Once that record is being changed by another person, that means the integrity of that record is being compromised. Sometimes malware can cause a system not to have integrity. If somebody writes a malware, a software that can go into the system and affect the integrity of that system and modify records, modify system files, that means the system does no longer have integrity. Then the last point we have is availability of the system. Availability of the system is that the system is available for use for the right people at the right time. That means the system is available for use by the right users at the right time. When you have access to information and that information at the right time, that is what we call availability. We have an incident which we call ransomware incident, whereby the ransomware is written, like a malware is written, such that it does not give you access to your resources, except maybe a particular sum of money is paid. By so doing, it's denying you availability of that system. So availability is very, very important in a system. At any point in time, for instance, you want to use your Facebook or your WhatsApp, you just log into your system and you have access into it. If there is a malware that can, not give you access into that resources at that particular time, that means availability is compromised. So these three components, confidentiality, integrity, and availability, are the key components that can be used to control information, that can be used to provide security for information. So we also have a concept where we have threats. Threat is a way that IT professionals use to assess organizations. They look at these tools and see how can we assess an organization and ensure that the security of that organization is guaranteed. One of them is threat. They look at the threat when new incidents with potential to harm a system crop up in the system. They look at it and then they look at the vulnerability, the weakness of that system. How liable would that system be hacked? They say known weaknesses that hackers can exploit. So how can they exploit this vulnerability? If they add that to the threat, they will have what we call the risks. They say the potential for damage when a risk exploits a vulnerability. That means what percentage of risk is that system exposed to? This is the measures that professionals, security professionals use to ascertain if a system is either potential to a threat or not. If the risk, for instance, now they can set the risk level to be maybe like 8% out of 10. And when the risk level is 8%, they know it's very, very high. They know that that system is liable to be exploited or to be attacked. So they have to do something to make sure that that system is not attacked. But if the risk level is maybe between 0 and 1, they know that it's still at a very, very low level. So risk is the estimated probability that a threat will occur or be activated. We are going to look at firewalls and intrusion detection system. Why do we need firewalls? You have a network where all computers are connected, where your resources are connected. For instance, you have a LAN and your internet is connected. You are connected to the internet so that you'll be able to have access to the internet. So if you don't have firewalls and intrusion detection, you discover that your system will be liable. But before we go into firewalls and intrusion detection, let us look at some key concept words. We are going to say, what is an intruder? An intruder is a person who forcefully attempts to break into or misuse the system or its resources. If you try to break into a resources where you are not authorized, or you are inside the resources and you misuse it, that means you are an intruder. We have two types of intruder. We have the outsider that works outside the network and the insider that works inside the network. I will explain this. When we say an outsider outside your network, it means somebody that is outside your organizational network that is trying to hack in, an external person that is trying to hack into your system and steal information. That's an outsider. Then the insider is somebody who is a staff, maybe working inside the company, but try to misuse the privileges. For instance, he might decide to give his password to an outsider to be able to use the organization network, or he might decide to just do some things that are not in line with the policy of that organization. When that kind of person is called an insider. There will be firewalls and intrusion detection system. What are firewalls and intrusion detection? Firewalls and intrusion, they are just softwares and hardwares that are used to control network security. They are used to control network security. You can see that the firewall, if not for the firewall, you see that people can easily, from externally, have access to your system. But for the firewall and intrusion detection, it can be a hardware, like I said, or the software. They are used to control network security, so that an external person will not be able to have access, or when an external person have access to the system will be able to detect. So firewalls use what we call static rules. They use static rules to define and limit the network to prevent external intrusion. External means somebody that is trying to log in from outside, that is trying to attack the system from outside. When somebody tries to attack the system from outside, you can see from the diagram, the firewalls will be able to protect it. And if the person is not allowed to come in, it will move the person packet to what we call a dustbin. It will isolate it. But if the packet is genuine, it will allow the packet to go in and it will go into the secure private local area network. So one of the advantages of the firewall is that it protects unauthorized external attack. It does not allow unauthorized external attack to come into the system. So it blocks bad protocols and it blocks bad guys from coming into the system. though it has a disadvantage. One of the disadvantages is that it cannot protect internal or insider attack. That means somebody who is working in an organization and decided to become malicious or decided to do something bad, the firewall cannot protect. Then we have the intrusion detection system. It monitors a network or a system for harmful activities or policy breach. What do we mean by policy breach? For instance, now you are working in an organization, and then the organization says nobody should use a USB flash because it can easily compromise the system and bring in virus and malware. And then maybe one of the staff decided to put a flash into the system. Intrusion detection system will be able to beep and be able to make noise for the administrator to know that, oh, somebody is trying to intrude into the system. Another example is that maybe in a network, somebody is trying to breach the network. It could be an external attacker is trying to breach the network. The intrusion detection will be able to detect and make noise. So the intrusion detection is able to protect the system from both internal and external attack. Based on the type we are using, we have the network intrusion detection system that is used for the network, for the local area network, and to protect the system from external attack. And then we have the host that can also be used inside the network, inside the local area network, to protect insiders attack. Although we can use firewalls to protect our system from external attack, but sometimes the firewalls fail. Why do they fail? One of the reasons why firewalls can fail is because they are difficult to configure properly. That's one of the reasons. To configure it, you need an expert knowledge to configure it. So if you don't configure it properly, it might not work properly. Remember, I told you firewalls are a set of rules. So you have to make sure that those rules are followed very, very well to enable you to configure it properly. Then another thing that can make a firewall to fail is that the hackers can bypass the firewall. You know, hackers have a way. They can write packets that can bypass the firewall. And when they do that, the firewall will not be able to detect that they are hackers. Then software bugs. You know, softwares are developed by humans, and most of the time they have bugs. The programmer might write some errors, might include some errors that the hacker might exploit. When the hacker studies the program very, very well, he will be able to discover some loopholes. We call that bugs, and he might decide to use that bug to come in. So the software that controls the firewall might have a bug that the attacker can exploit. The other mean is that hackers can use what we call HTTP to have access into a system. Why can they have HTTP? HTTP is what we call hypertext transfer protocols. They are protocols that enables you to communicate from one computer to the other. So if hackers are able to tie their code to HTTP, because the firewall will allow HTTP to pass through, it doesn't protect, it doesn't stop it, because that is the means of communication. So a smart hacker can write his code and tie to the HTTP and pass it into your network, and the intrusion, the firewall will not be able to detect it. And another thing is that the firewall can only protect against known problems. You know, I said it's a set of rules. So if those set of rules, you know them, and there are some other malware that you don't know their rules, and you did not include them in your firewall, then it cannot protect you from any of those attacks. So I'm going to look at now the next area we're going to look at computer malware. We're going to look at computer malware. Computer malware are just like they are computer malwares, or sometimes you can call them malicious code, are small programs that are developed by programmers. Those I call the black hackers. Those the bad guys. They develop it to do what? To damage computer system. They can also erase maybe data from the system, operating system files or your personal files. Or their aim could be to steal information from you, sensitive information from you, or it can also modify your system settings so that your system will not behave the way it used to behave. So that is what a malware or malicious code does. So when you hear malicious code or malware, know that what it does is that it can damage your system, erase data, it can enable a hacker to steal information from your system, or instead it can steal the information and take it to the hacker, or it can modify your system settings. So examples of malware are computer viruses, worms, Trojan, exploit kit. There are a lot of them, but we are going to look at three: the viruses, the worm, and the Trojan horses in our next slide.